Welcome to PHP Podcast. I'm Mike.
And this is Orlando, and we're on episode 307.
Yeah, 307. And, we're like into it. Now, remember we were like coming up on episode 300 and it was like, man, we're almost to 300. Now we're in 300s now. Like there's no turning back.
Yeah, we're in a weird place where I actually like going back and listening to the old episodes because I'm like, I can't believe.
Well, part of it too is like we have a couple people on our Discord.
Yeah, that's what got me listening to it.
They'll occasionally like point out something from an older episode, and it's like, yeah, I should go back and listen. And it's like, oh man, we've definitely changed, and we've actually had episodes where we've talked about ways we've changed over the years. And but unless you actually go back and listen, that's one of the cool things about like documenting what we're doing is we can always go back, and that kind of ties into our episode today, which we're going to be talking about the slow and steady win the reselling race, and part of it is like looking back and saying, wow, like 4 years, 4 years, like that was a long time ago. And there have been changes, but they weren't like all immediate overnight changes.
Like, there was a lot of fails in between.
But then like incremental improvements. And then you can look and say like, in the moment, it's like, man, there hasn't been a ton of change. But then when you look back over 4 years, you're like, oh man, like things have definitely improved. They've changed. So yeah, today we're talking about to slow and steady win the reselling race.
And by the way, if you're wondering like where did I catch the older episodes, maybe you're on Spotify and you can't catch episodes 1 through 199, I think. Just jump on over to any other platform. It's on there. There was this weird transition that happened. They just didn't make it on Spotify.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what some weird thing happened for sure with the Spotify. And I don't know how to fix that without like totally changing all of the other episodes. So it's not doable.
You could go to YouTube. I mean, they're all on YouTube.
Yeah, they're all on YouTube. So you can definitely find them. We don't a lot of podcasts, and part of it is because it's expensive to upload podcasts. There are now programs that will do things for free, but then you're limited on stuff. And so because of people like you who support us, we're able to keep our library is open. A lot of times podcasts that even ones I enjoy, like you go back and it's like they only have the most recent like 20 episodes because it's expensive to store episodes on, servers and things like that. So again, thank you to all of our listeners who over the last 307 episodes have supported us and helped us get to this point.
All right. So the reason I thought about this was because, I think about, I was, getting nostalgic and listening to older episodes. And I remember right away, when I left my full-time position in being an educator and to full-time reselling, I was thinking back, like I could not have done this right away. Like there's no way I could have just one day said, I'm done with this, and then started hitting the bins or the thrift stores or getting pallets and doing reselling. So I'm a big believer that slow and steady does win the race, but I thought maybe in this conversation, maybe you might push back, or maybe we're just in full agreement. Maybe you, as you're listening, you'll push back and go, Orlando, no, like you can quickly source a bunch of items. You can list them. It's all depends on your hustle. And that may be true. But I do believe the safest way to grow in reselling is slow and steady. And I'm not talking about like sloth slow. I'm talking about, I don't know, somewhere in between sloth and the hare.
Yeah, it's incremental improvement, right? Like I've heard phrases, and I think it's true. You can never stay in the same place. You're either improving or you're moving backwards. Like the whole idea of like you just stayed neutral for periods of time, whether that's like in your physique, with your diet, whether it's with your business, whether it's with your personal finances. You're either improving or you're getting worse. And a lot of times it happens at such a micro level that you're not noticing like, hey, today I'm such a small amount better, such a small amount worse, that it could feel like you're at the same place. But the reality is and we see this with so many examples, like people might be getting annoyed by the fact that I always mention things like diet and exercise. But I think it's such a perfect analogy with business, because if you look at the people who try and like crash diet, and they a lot of times will have success.
Yeah, that's been me for like a decade. You can 2 decades.
You can lose 50 pounds in a couple of months by like starving yourself and not actually like learning the best process for working out and eating. Or you got another person who took 5 times as long to lose that same amount, or 10 times as long to lose that same amount, but throughout they were learning things. And I think that's the same thing with business, is you can try and crash your way through growth in business, but you might actually get to a point where you're not prepared for the place that you get to. You're not actually capable of handling the books. You're not capable of handling the inventory, the shipping, because you haven't learned along the way. Whereas if you're growing slowly, you're actually, you're preventing yourself from growing too fast and being in a place where, like, people who win the lottery, I think money's another good example. How many people who win the lottery, 5 years down the road are bankrupt and worse off than they started? Because it's different when you just are given a ton of money right up front, as opposed to over years and years and years, you learned how to handle money as you gain that money. So
I remember my first few years in education when I would get a Christmas bonus, instead of using that money to invest or, being smart about it, just ended up just spending a bunch of money on the credit card, going, oh, we'll pay back the credit card. And then that money was gone. So that's what I want to talk about is the first thing about slow and steady. What it allows you to do is preserve your capital.
It's good.
Because I see, this happens to everyone. I'm guilty of it. I probably have, out of the almost 3,500 items in my store, I would say probably 500 to 700 of them were just items I should have never bought.
Yeah, not great buys.
Not great buys. And why? Because instantly I was like, I got to go out there. I got to source. If it makes profit, I'm going to pick it up. I don't care if, there's 10 of them listed and only one of them sold. It eventually will sell. And I would always say that to myself.
It's so good. I mean, think about the very first time I went to garage sales, even before I went with you. I went one other time on my own. I've been to garage sales in my life, but I mean, with the idea of I'm going to be a reseller. And I went with, I think $30, like $20 or $30 in my pocket. Now I look back, I'm like, that's nothing to take to a garage sale. But had I have had somebody have said, here's $2,000, I want you to go buy as much inventory as you can so that you can build this reselling business. If I was like, I have this money and I want to get to where Orlando's at today. Can you imagine the stuff I would have bought the first day at garage sales? If I was like, well, I've got $2,000, so I'm going to buy this, I'm going to buy this, I'm going to buy that. And I would have blown through that money. And then, looking back, a lot of those things would have been bad buys, or I would have spent too much on the wrong type of shipping supplies. I would have bought shipping supplies and then been like, wait a minute, that's not the best method of shipping.
Yeah, you would have bought your Rolo. You would have bought your nice SLR camera. You would have bought, like the photo booth, like everything, which in time, there's a place to buy them. But if you're buying everything right away, and let's say you don't even have money to buy any more inventory, that's all your money that's tied up.
Yep.
Right. You don't want to do that. And even Amazon, it's very dangerous. I think you and I experienced that a little bit with those dolls that we bought the first year of the podcast, where I really wanted Mike to scale really fast. And so I gave him an idea and it had worked for me. But if I would have replayed that, and I hate telling Mike this, I probably would have told Mike, like, don't buy as much as you can. Like, buy maybe a quarter, feel the market and see how it goes.
Yeah. Well, luckily I have the mindset of that was still a learning experience for me. And I learned a lot from it.
Yeah.
One of the beautiful things, think about how long is college for the average person? If you're just going for a bachelor's, 4 years, right? If you're going for a graduate degree, you're looking at 6 years plus. So the average person, to learn the field they're supposed to go into, and that doesn't even include on the job training, which you have to do for a year or so after anyways, or more, depending on the job you go into. So you're looking anywhere from 4 to like 7, 8 years of learning the field that you're going to be doing in your life.
Yeah.
And reselling is kind of that way. The lucky thing is, instead of paying for, $20,000 a year for tuition, that's money that I'm spending. So even if I made $1,000 mistake early on in my reselling, at least I learned from it. But can you imagine if it was a $20,000 mistake the first year?
And I've had earlier on in Amazon, when I was really trying to scale my Amazon business, I'd go into a store and I didn't understand all the complications of the fact that, Amazon can get on the listing. Amazon warehouse can get on the listing. You can get gated even though you've been ungated. You have at that time, cook groups weren't that big, but now a cook group could destroy your listing like automatically. The lead gets on that cook group, 30 people jump on it and things can get destroyed. And so at that earlier on in my Amazon, I used to be able to, I could run risk, but I wouldn't do it anymore, where I would go into a store and I drop $2,000 to $3,000. I remember one Black Friday, I think it was the first year of the podcast, maybe. Yeah. I dropped $3,000 at a Walmart and everything seemed good. And then overnight, that listing got flooded. And that was one of the first lessons I learned, that, okay, I can't go after Black Friday items because I'll lose money. Now, if you're a new reseller, you're maybe watching on Instagram and you're seeing all these people picking up Black Friday deals, not understanding that they are veteran resellers, that they understood that they need to do merchant fulfilled the moment they pick it up and they need to sell it before the morning, which a lot of people do, right? But you might be new and you see people do all these things and they go in and they, on eBay, let's say they get a 1,000 shoe haul, right? And they're like, oh, I got these 1,000 shoes. I paid, $3,000 for these $1,000 of shoes, but I'll be able to double my money, which for them is okay because they probably have another 20, 30, 40K. They probably have the storage, right, to handle all that. But you might be a brand new reseller. And like you said, let's say you had that, imaginary $2,000, $1,000. That $1,000 might take you a year to make back if you're not wise about that call.
Yeah. And that kind of is, we're already in some ways talking about the next point of what this prevents. Growing slowly helps prevent other mistakes, because we've been talking a little bit about the financial capital, but there's other aspects of it too. Like, think about how important your eBay reputation is, your business is, or your Amazon reputation is. So if you were to get a haul like that, let's say, I've over the years learned how to ship electronics. Over the years, I've learned how to ship breakables. There have been a couple of breakables I've shipped that have broken because I wasn't quite as experienced as I am now. But imagine if I was starting out, I grew really fast, and I was able to buy 100 pieces of really breakable things, and they're hot, they're moving quick. And I sold 30 of them in the first week, and I packaged them. And of those 30, let's say half of them broke. There goes my eBay store, right? Like, how do I recover from that? That's not just a financial mistake, but I'm going to have to start all over. I mean, that's got the whole nightmare. And can you easily do that? And what about tracking your IPs? And so there's a whole thing involved of, it prevents other mistakes. When you have a shipping mistake, and even if you have to eat $100, man, that was a lesson you learned. But if you repeat that 30 times, 40 times, 50 times in the course of a month before you've learned, oh, this is how I should ship it, you could have, almost damage to your reputation as a business, or even just I can't do this. How do I, and you burn out and you're done. So there's shipping things you have to learn. I mean, when I first started selling, I was actually taking my items into the post office and, weighing it at the machine and taking the time. And I can only imagine if I hadn't learned how to do pirate ship and how to print my own labels and how to package. That takes time to learn. And you can learn all those things, but you still haven't learned maybe estimating shipping costs. One of the first things that I sold that I lost money on was a turntable, a record turntable. And I underestimated what shipping was going to cost. And I was brutal. Like, I got hit hard on that. Looking back, losing $30 on an item isn't the end of the world. But when you're a new reseller and you're like, yeah, I sold this thing for $80 plus $25 shipping. And then you realize, oh, it's going to cost me like $60 to ship this. And then by the time I buy the shipping supply, like, it's a big wake up to have. And I'm glad I learned that mistake. I had that mistake and I learned from it once in that period of time, as opposed to having to learn that 40 times and it's done.
Yeah. And it's interesting because on our Discord, I can't tell you, I mean, I've been a lot of times, but it's been more than I expected, where somebody would message us or say something like, hey, Orlando, I picked up all these items and I found out that you can't sell it on eBay. Or I found out that I'm gated on Amazon. I don't know what to do. And that happens, pretty frequently if you're brand new, in the sense that, especially on Amazon, right? You see these gurus and they're out there and they're like scanning CDs, and CDs is a pretty tough place to get ungated in. Or they're scanning food, and there's a whole process to being ungated in foods. And so they see this and they go in and they'll drop hundreds of dollars. Right. And they're like, and they don't think about the fact that they may be gated. They don't think about the fact that there's expiration dates. They don't think about the competition, and they'll come back and it's a major mistake. Right. And they may walk away from reselling. Right. Because after that, they're like, I can't do this. Like, this is my first try and I'm done. And so that's part of the issue, is that, slow and steady, I truly believe, prevents you from being overwhelmed and burnt out. I listen, we've been on this podcast for over 4 years. Right, this is year 5 now, right? Correct.
I'm not 100% sure.
I think it's like 20. It was 2018 when we started.
Was it
something like that? So I was looking at in our old episodes, episode uno. And listen, I would say probably 25% of the people on Instagram that we used to interact with or followed, they're gone. Just gone, and it could be for various reasons. Maybe not have been burnout. Maybe it was, they decided
change of circumstances.
Yeah, change of circumstances. Maybe they scaled up. Maybe, they bought a bunch of Ethereum at, under $100. Who knows what it is, right? But I can tell you a lot of them have burned out. I have some in mind right now. Specifically, I can think about where they were making YouTube videos, they were scaling, but I felt they were moving too fast. And yeah, did it get the clicks on the YouTube video? Sure, it did. Did it get the following on the Instagram? It did. But over time, it just became too much. They got tired of it, right? They thought they were going to be the shoe seller. They thought they were going to be the electronic seller. They thought they were going to, make these videos and buy, 10 pallets of stuff. And after a while, they're just like, oh, it's too much of a hustle. And eBay is a hustle. Yeah. And Amazon is a hustle. They're both hustles.
But it's a good thing to know what to expect, right? Like even something like taking a vacation. The first time we took vacation, kind of put our store in vacation mode, or it just extended the handling time was probably what we did. Mm-hmm. We had under 100 items in our store. Wow. So we understood at that point, like, okay, how much does our sales drop? What is it like when we come home and we were still getting sales? And now we were used to only shipping maybe like one item every couple of days. And now we're shipping 10 items that have to go out tonight. Mm-hmm. Right. So you do that one time, you're like, okay, like this is what I have to experience. Then the next time you go on a vacation like that, or you flash sell your store and you put a bunch of stuff on discount, you recognize, okay, if I happen to sell 20 items in one day, I can estimate how much time it's going to take me to ship this. So before I make that decision, before we pull that trigger, my wife and I can look at each other and say, all right, it's going to probably, if everything goes as planned, it's probably going to take us 8 hours to pack, ship, find, get to the store, all the things we have to do if we do this flash sale. Do we have that time available tomorrow? Mm-hmm. But if you're new and you haven't experienced that a couple of times at smaller amounts, then the first time you do that, and next thing you know, you're up all night long packing, mm-hmm. and you're like, I can't do this. This is too much. And even if it's not a lifetime of burnout where you're like, I'm done reselling, but just that instant hit that can be to your reselling experience in that moment of, this is too hard. Like, maybe I'm going to keep going on reselling, but now you're defeated. So now when you go sourcing, you don't have that joy of like, all right, look at what I'm getting. In the back of your head, you're thinking, oh my gosh, shipping and selling. And instead of having like a healthy understanding of what it's going to take, you almost have fear. And I think you're much better off with a respect of what reselling takes rather than a outright fear. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So if I go and I buy a big bulk buy of something, there's a certain level of respect there of understanding. And it's fear in that sense of like a respect. You know what I'm saying? This is what it's going to take to clean these items, list these items, picture these items, ship these items, store these items. Am I capable of doing it? I already have an understanding and I can make that decision. As opposed to you've been burnt multiple times in the last couple of months. You see that and you're just like, nope. And you walk away, mm-hmm. even if it is manageable, but you're so like anxious about the process of it that you don't even take it on.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. It's just, I can't tell you how many times I've seen people and they've messaged me on Instagram. They're like, hey, Orlando, I'm closing my eBay store. I have 700 items. I have 800 items. I have 1,000 items and I move too fast. I don't even like the stuff I sourced. I have 20, 30 VCRs. I knew there was money in VCRs, but I don't even want to test them. Do you want to buy? Right? Do you want to buy the store? And we get, I would say at least once a week, some kind of message about, hey, do you want to buy this stuff from me? I'm closing my store and so on. And usually I don't take them on because I've learned that I myself, unless I'm really interested, right? So if you have like a 90s video game store that shut down and you want to sell it to me, I'd buy, right? But if it's like, hey, I have a 90s used electronics full of DVD players and VCRs, are you interested? I'm going to go, no, like I don't want to deal with it. Right. And so you really got to be careful because it's very easy to go, this is profitable. I'm going to pick this up. I saw this YouTube and this guy, he makes thousands of dollars selling electronics and I'm just going to source electronics. And you might in the beginning go, wow, there's good money. But after a week of it, after 2 weeks of it, after 3 weeks of it, you might be done. Or it could be clothing, right? You see these individual, vintage sellers, they make a killing, right? They make a full-time living. They're traveling. They're going to trade shows, and you're like, I want to be one of those people. And then you realize after a while, like you sourced 1,000 vintage tees from a wholesale distributor and it's grimy and it's gross and you hate the smell in your house and you hate taking measurements and you hate dealing with messages. And so I'm a big believer that slow and steady allows you to grow. And one of the ways that you can be helped is by joining our Patreon. So if you haven't joined our Patreon, which allows you to jump onto our Discord, I strongly encourage you to. We're growing. We're at about, we're getting closer to the 200, right? And so really want to be able to grow that even more in the sense that, everybody that's in there has a buy-in, right? So it's only $5.55 a month. It's not that much, and automatically you're bound to make money, right? Whether it's learning how to ship better, learning how to source better, hustle of the week,
just having community, somebody
to vent to, getting therapy for $5.55 a month, whatever it is, it's great. And the beauty of this Discord, it's not a cook group, and so, if there's not too many people on a certain bolo, there, we don't do like the hot retail stuff. And so it doesn't matter. Somebody's like, hey, be on the lookout for, one of the hustle of the week today is going to be the set of Care Bears glasses, right? It's not going to flood the market, right? It's not going to kill it. And so it's a great place to be. It's a thriving community. Mike and I love the interaction all the time. I love how you and I are there at different times. You're there like at 5:40 in the morning or something. I'm there at like 2:30 in the morning, but that's because I stay up late and you wake up early.
Yeah, you're getting the late stuff. I'm getting the morning stuff. And there's days where I'll go a couple of days where I'm not even able to interact. I'm still reading stuff, but I've got other things going on. And what I love about the community is, if you're hoping to just have a place where it's like, hey, I'm going to Mike and Orlando's online school, that's not what this is, right? So this is not us teaching classes, though we do, have input questions, and questions we answer, and even like ideas, and hey, here's something that we discovered. But it's, even if I'm not there and you're not there for a time, there's still interaction happening. People are talking to each other, they're sharing bolos, they're answering questions. And that's what we wanted to develop. We wanted to develop a community because we know we have the best listeners, like the people who are listening to PHP Podcast, the people who recognize the people who come to PHP Podcast aren't looking for the get rich quick stuff. Mm-hmm. And if that's what they're looking for, if they're hoping to buy their Lambo next week, they listen to a couple episodes and they bounce. They're not becoming a patron member. So the people who are in our community are the ones that recognize this is a grind, this is work. So we love it. We thank you guys. And again, there are a lot of people who don't interact on a regular basis on the Discord, and they're there and they're just learning, or they're just supporting us. And like I said at the beginning, it is expensive. What we do, besides just the time Orlando and I spend on the podcast, giving up time, reselling, time with our family, those things, just having the camera equipment, the memory cards, uploading the stuff, the subscriptions to the programs we need in order to upload podcasts and edit podcasts, and those things take money. And so those of you who are supporting us are keeping us in the model where we can give our content for free, and we're not having to say, here's 10 minutes of our episode. If you want the real stuff, pay. So thank you for those of you who continue to support us.
Yeah. So go down to the link, patreon.com/PHP Podcast, and join our community. Yeah. Now, what does Slow and Steady allow you to do? Okay. Well, first of all, it allows you to learn where to source and what to source. And what I mean by that is, initially, you don't want to have those huge bulk buys, right? Initially, you kind of want to feel things out, because something that initially you're like, oh, I really like sourcing this, within a month of taking pictures and packing it and shipping it and maybe dealing with returns, you're kind of like, you know what? I'm glad I only have like 2 or 3 of these instead of 1,000 of these, right? Because again, if you have 1,000 of those and you're miserable with 2 or 3, yeah, you're probably going to be done reselling. Right. It also allows you to find out what's valuable. Right. And so one of the reasons I've been doing a lot more bulk buys. So, like this last weekend, I'll talk about this next week, but I missed out on a major bolo, but I scored a room full of Padres gear, San Diego Padres jerseys, ticket stubs, bobbleheads, you name it. And I had no problem going in there and just like grabbing stuff off the racks and just grabbing everything I can, because I knew the value of that stuff. I knew that no matter what, when I go home, I'm going to realize I've 10x my money. Right. But had I not been reselling for 4 or 5 years and picked up, memorabilia here and there, it's very possible I could have gone in that room and just picked up a bunch of stuff that wasn't very valuable. Yeah. Right. Because I hadn't learned that lesson.
I think back to when I first started reselling, and there's still, I still scan a lot of things that I still look up, probably most things that I'm like actually end up buying and selling.
I still do too.
However, when I first started, I would spend time just basically scanning or looking up almost everything. I had to learn what brands sold, what brands didn't sell. Within those brands, why did they sell? What about, because you can look at like a mug and be like, oh, this is cool, an old 49ers mug. But then you realize it's just like the Chotsky thing they gave out and everybody has one. Like, it's not the expensive one. It's like, oh, there's a difference between that mug and the one that's like a special vintage one, or one that was like a unique thing. So the more you scan, and it takes time, there is no shortcut. That's what I love about reselling. Now, again, there are things you can do to shorten the amount. It's the same thing. I'll bring it back to the fitness thing. When you see somebody with like a really good physique, you knew they had to work really hard to get there. Now, there are some people, it's like, okay, maybe they take steroids. Maybe they still had to put work in it. It took years and years to get to that point. And it's the same thing with reselling because it's a knowledge-based thing. There is no shortcut. I can't take somebody who's never resold anything unless they're already into a hobby. Like I know a guy who's like really into RC stuff. I know a guy who's really into, I was really into cameras. So that was easier for me. So if you're already into a hobby, you put that time in. Mm-hmm. But if you're just coming out, this isn't the Matrix. I can't just upload a chip to your head and say, now you know what to resell. You have to spend the time watching the YouTube videos, searching through eBay, scanning the items. And the more you do that, now I can walk into a thrift store and I'm not scanning everything. I'm only like looking, I'm like, I've already scanned these types of items. I've already seen these books. I've already looked at these brands of clothes and they don't sell. Oh, I've never actually seen this brand before. Now I'm going to scan that one. Or I've already sold 3 of these in the last couple of years and they sell like hotcakes and I just grab it and I don't even have to scan it. Mm-hmm. So that only comes from time. There is no shortcut to that. I say no shortcut. There's things you can do to shorten the time it takes to learn it, but there's no way to get there without putting in some amount of time, some amount of energy. You can buy a course, you can listen to Pure Hustle podcast, and you're going to be better off listening to Pure Hustle podcast when you go out sourcing than if you had not listened to Pure Hustle podcast, right? There's things you can do that'll make it easier. Like, oh, I've heard those bolos before. I've heard those hustles. So there are ways you can spend your time, but no matter what, you're going to have to spend the time. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's one of those things that show, and I know you hate the word discipline, but it's those.
I don't hate it anymore.
Good. Well, it's going on, man. So that it's those who are willing to like over time be disciplined. And I think going slow takes a certain amount of self-control and discipline because there is that attitude or that temptation to say, I'm going to go full tilt. I'm going full time in the next couple of weeks. I'm going to buy all this stuff and then I'm going to be good, as opposed to say, you know what? I'm willing to grind out the 9 to 5 for another year or two while I'm learning these niches, and can it sustain me full time before I quit my job? It takes a lot of self-control when you're over your 9 to 5 and you're tired of working for the man and you've already had a little bit of success reselling. Like, it takes a lot of self-control to say, you know what? I'm going to actually make sure I have a year's worth of data, and I'm going to make sure the data prove that I can sustain reselling, not just Q4, but Q1 and Q2 and Q3. Does my niche drop at a certain point of the year? Only time and experience can give you that. But those who are willing to do that and put that time in, you are going to have success. And most people aren't willing to say, hey, a year later, I'm 5% better in my business than I was last year. Mm-hmm. Most people want to see 70% growth, 100% growth. But if you have 5 to 10% growth year over year, you're going to outpace your competition because your competition is going to be gone. Yeah,
agreed. And we've seen that. I mean, we've been in the social media space, for 5 years. And here's the thing: most people, this is the way it used to be. So in the early days of YouTube, when Craigslist Hunter was around, Bonafide Hustler back in the day, he's still on there making videos. College Picker, like all those guys, they were reselling for a while before they ever made any YouTube videos. What I find now is there are brand new people, and they're not just saying, hey, we're going to document what we're doing. They're just like, this is how you become a great reseller. And it's like, you've only been reselling for maybe a year. Mm-hmm. Now, granted, can you learn really quick how to resell? Well, yeah, you can. I think that you can expedite things. But I get scared. I'm just going to give you an example of what scares me is when people think they know how to source and they don't. Sometimes I'll talk about wholesale vintage dealers. And I've been to a few, and all the time people hit me up like, hey, I didn't know these existed, and are these out here? And recently an Instagram account had dropped every single one in the country. Right. And the few things you need to understand with those companies, yes. Do they have the ability to sort through everything they pick up? No, they don't. Right. But here's the thing. You also have to understand that whenever larger wholesale distributors are trying to offload stuff, they're trying to offload the stuff that isn't as profitable, right? There is cherry picking that happens, right? Just with all kinds of businesses, right? And so when somebody's like, oh yeah, I'm so excited. I bought 1,000 Harley tees from this company and they're coming in next week. And I'm like, all right, I hope the cost was low, because they may find that one Harley tee that's worth $300 to $500. But they may find another 100 in there that's only worth like $5, or they can't even sell it, right? So you need to be careful. And so if you're slowly doing it, if you're slowly, going to garage sales, going to the thrift, doing your research on Terapeak or on eBay, whatever way you figure things out, if you're building that knowledge base that Mike talked about, then you can make the big buys. Then you can go, you know what? I'm going to drop this amount of money, but I'm pretty sure with 25% of the inventory, I'll make all my money back. And after that, it doesn't matter. I don't have my money tied up. But if you're brand new and capital is an issue and you decide I'm going to go all in, it's a little risky, Now, the other thing is it also allows you to learn how to ship. And we've talked about this a few times already in this podcast, but yeah, here's the thing. I think that shipping is one of the number one obstacles to being successful as a reseller, because you can't scale. I mean, you could list all day, but if shipping can take time, right? I have mentioned before where I can, ship a good amount of like 20 items in 30 minutes. And some people are like, you can't do that. I'm like, yeah, you can. If it's clothing and you have poly bags and you do, bulk shipping labels and all that, you can do it, but it takes time. But if you're doing electronics, like you had said, if you're doing valuables, if you don't know how to float a box, right? If you check out our float a box video on YouTube, it's know what we're talking about. If you don't know how to ship a mug, if you don't know how to ensure that corners of a VCR don't get slammed in the process,
or estimate the cost of shipping, a lot of times, if you're doing something like free shipping or building it in, maybe it's easy, but even if you're doing the estimated or the calculated shipping, unless you actually pack the item first into the size of the box, you might be off on box size. Mm-hmm. You might be off on weight unless you actually weight it with the shipping material. So until you learn to estimate those things, you're going to run into issues. So slowly doing it kind of lets you get closer to estimating.
Onesie or twosie here, like you saw a big item one time, you're like, oh, okay, I know how to do this. I haven't talked about them, but there's these reseller flea market flippers, and they know how to build shipping crates for stuff. Like I saw a TikTok, they had a Harley sign probably the size of this wall, and the guy knew how to build a crate to ship it. Like, you imagine, I mean, I'm the kind of person that probably would buy that Harley sign just because it's cool. But I got to tell you, how much time would I waste? Because I'm not a construction kind of guy, and so I would probably lose a ton of money because I have to find somebody to build the crate for it. I'd have to contact, somebody who does freight. It'd be a beast, right? But if freight, for example, we get questions on the Discord about freight. How do I do freight? Or how do I, there's white glove service where people come to your door and they pick it up, and how do you get it from point A to point B if it's a huge item? And, you in the beginning, I got to tell you, furniture is one of those things that does not get sourced very much as far as when you go to a garage sales, unless it's furniture that it's easily transportable, like in a truck, right? Because, we see people pick up things in trucks all the time, but there's a lot of money in furniture, but you could, end up sourcing 10 pieces of furniture this way. And it all, Mike wants me back in the camera zone. And you don't know how to ship them, and they'll just sit and you'll have a ton of money just tied up. And then you might try to ship it and you incorrectly weigh it, or you use the wrong carrier, and you might be out a few $100s. But if you do if you do one or two at a time and you get the hang of it, eventually you will improve.
Yeah. And the last thing we're going to talk about with what it allows, before we get after our hustle week, we're going to talk about when it might be useful to speed up. And this one, I think, kind of leads into that, because you got to learn this first. I kind of look at it like infrastructure. You got to build the infrastructure. So when you start slowly, you're learning how to organize, you're learning how to scale, you're learning how to ship, you're learning how to organize things. I mean, all of there's so much that goes involved into running a business. And I almost look at it like building the infrastructure of anything. Maybe it's a highways, or maybe it's railroads. Think about the years and years it took, and people planning of how many people do we expect to ride on these roads? How wide do the roads need to be? How many feet of track do we need? Where are the stops? All the things it took to lay those tracks in the first place. But then once they're laid, then you can start really moving. Mm-hmm. Then you can say, okay, now we can move X amount of product. We can double the amount of product we have without actually changing anything, because we have the infrastructure. And when you move slowly, it allows you to build that infrastructure. You can't build, what's the saying? Rome wasn't built overnight. You can't build a cathedral overnight. You can't build a massive infrastructure system. I mean, Amazon, when it first started out, was basically just books. But what they were doing was building an infrastructure to be able to manage in a warehouse, to ship, to do the inventory, to do all of the logistics. They're basically were a logistic company that started with books. And they could slowly add more things and scale and grow to what Amazon is today, which is a monolith of a company. I mean, there's nothing that I don't think there's anything that even compares to what Amazon is. I mean, Walmart is like the brick and mortar version-ish, but it's still not even close. So when you look at that, though, they didn't just say like, hey, we got Amazon. We've already got a little bit of a logistical company. Let's sell everything. Even though they wanted to really be the everything store, they focused to start with on books. Why? So they could build the infrastructure. How many warehouses do we need? What kind of inventory can we store? Where are we going to have the trucks come in? Hey, we've got a big enough warehouse now. Now we can add a new product type. So they had to build the infrastructure first. And we're watching like live. Like sometimes I think back to like our grandparents or our great grandparents generation, like what that would have been like to watch things like roads really being built, like freeways and things like that. Like we almost just get to benefit from, hey, the power lines already ran. The roads are already here. We don't have to build.
It's kind of wild to think about that.
Right.
Everything's already set up for us.
But there are things that we're watching the infrastructure grow, right? Like electric vehicles with things like charging stations and batteries and the internet, and infrastructure has had to slowly build. The internet, when it first came out, couldn't handle high speed things that we're dealing with. It took time to build that infrastructure. And when you are reselling, when you're buying things, you're really doing that. You almost have to think of your business as, I have to build the infrastructure that potentially can handle even more workload. If you've got the space, hey, over time, I bought a storage unit that was big enough, and or I built a big enough place on my property, something like that. Well, now that I have this, I'm capable of scaling. But before I scale, I need to figure out what is my organization system going to look like? What about bookkeeping, right? All of those things you've got to figure out. You've got to develop. Hey, if I already know that every other week on Wednesday, I sit down and I go through every item I sold, I go through the receipts, I put it in a folder, I've got digital copies. That's how my bookkeeping works. Hey, now you can scale and not have to worry about the bookkeeping on it.
Yeah.
But if you're just going from, hey, I sold 50 items last year to now I want to sell 10,000 items, you're going to have a nightmare of bookkeeping because you don't already have the structures in place. You don't have the systems ready to go that will support what you need.
Well, you know, an example, and I've shared this many times, my first major Toys R Us haul when I went turned to full time, I bought, I don't know, let's say 1,000 pieces at a Toys R Us at once. I had never bought a storage unit. I didn't know how to organize. I had done a lot of Amazon, but I mainly just did books. And so it ended up, it still was successful in the end. Like you'll see me post on Instagram how much money I made on it, but it got kind of dangerous because I had to literally drive from LA to San Diego, rent a storage unit over the phone, show up, buy shelving, put the shelving together, put everything up. Then I shipped everything to Amazon. And within a year, I had to ship everything back to me from Amazon because it just didn't sell because I didn't understand fully the sell-through rate on those items. I didn't understand what people were looking for. I didn't understand that it was better for me to store it. I mean, and so I lost hours on that item, right? Where, you know, had I, you know, been smarter about it and, you know, at that time I had to move. And so we'll talk about that I was in a place where I could speed up if I needed to. But if I could have replayed it and I had a little bit of more time, I would have figured out what markets were best to sell those items. I would have figured out what best way to, you know, organize them because there's a lot of them that got lost and I had to look for them. And here's the thing. If you're brand new to reselling, you can slowly build that inventory. You can start with tote 1, 2, and 3, right? Make sure you put that custom SKU label, right? Because if you're out and you source, let's say 1,000 items and you just start throwing them into totes and they start selling, you're going to have a great time trying to find all those items. But if you have it all organized, you figure out your bookkeeping, you know where, you know, what shipping supplies you need to buy ahead of time. That's one big thing I've been able to do recently in this past year is I buy all my shipping supplies ahead of time. And I never stress about where is this box? Where is this poly bag? Do I have enough tape? I have everything I need. I never lose time on shipping. There might be every once in a while we're at the Frankenbox, but that is a rarity. But again, being slow about moving things, it allows you to stay organized and then you can scale appropriately.
That's good.
All right. Hey, we're talking about shipping and talking about packing is AmericanBowlBoy.com.
Yeah.
Best products out there. I would say right now, as you know, we're right around the corner from Q3 and going into Q4. Are we in Q3 right now? We're in Q3, aren't we? Wow, times are flying.
Goes quick.
You're going to need that bubble wrap. So if you haven't yet, best price, best item out there, best shipping, AmericanBowlBoy.com. Go to the link below. My favorite is always the 4-foot roll. That's about 750 square feet for about $39.99. Free 2-day shipping, or next day you could do local pickup. Just check them out. They've been great to us. And you know what? I'm going to see if we can get us another coupon code again.
Let's do it.
It's been a little bit. So check out AmericanBowlBoy.com. And if you have not been following us on social media, we are Pure Hustle Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. We are Pure Hustle Podcast, Pure Hustle Cast on Twitter. And you could also give us a call at 619-738-1170. That's 619-738-1170. And you could always shoot us an email at purehustlepodcast@gmail.com. That's purehustlepodcast@gmail.com. And if you're listening to the podcast and you haven't jumped over to our YouTube, jump on over. Our hope is I want to at least get over 10K by the end of the year, and we're slowly getting there. I feel like things begin to ramp up, right? The higher you get on there. So really looking forward to seeing you guys over here, subscribing. Make sure to hit that bell notification and smash that like button. And also, if you could leave us, we already put, right? We have that thing at the beginning. It's called the stinger.
Yeah. If you're listening to the podcast, you hear a little, hey, please support us by going to leave a review on iTunes. If you're watching on YouTube, though, you don't hear that. You just see the like and subscribe pop up on the screen. But yeah, if you could go over to iTunes and leave us a review, we love the ones where we can actually read it. If you don't have time to write something, you just want to leave us the stars, the 5 stars, that really, really helps get the word out. But man, when people write things, we read them all. We read every review that comes in, and it's one of those things that keeps us going. Like, are we making an impact? And it's like, okay, like what we're doing is it's helping people. And so we keep going.
And I want to say thank you, because we have had like a buildup, a swelling of reviews on our Apple iTunes, and really appreciate that. So just want to share like 3 of them. Keep it short here. I got one from the Chunkosaurus, and said, making money, $1,000 so far. Thanks.
Nice.
That's great. Hey,
yeah. Maybe you got a Bellow.
That's a great return on investment. And then here, I'll read a longer one here. This is from Secondhand Solo. Said, Here's a Podcast is truly one of the best reselling related podcasts out there. I'm new to reselling. I have found that Mike and Orlando are very informative with a lot of knowledge. I also appreciate the difference in opinion between the two of them. Do we disagree sometimes?
Yeah, I mean, we're not the same person. We're going to.
That can be a plus at times. It reminds you that there are a lot of ways to be successful in reselling. One person might approach things completely different than another, yet they both succeed. What works for one might not work for another. That's so true.
Yep.
That is so true. In the few months that I've been doing this, I've realized that there are many ways to be successful in reselling. That aspect of the business has been really encouraging. I would also suggest checking out the Pure Hustle Podcast Discord on Patreon. It is a great community. Everyone has great knowledge and an eagerness to help one another. If you have questions, the answer is there. In addition, Mike and Orlando are very hilarious and keep me laughing with every episode. Appreciate that. Keep doing what you're doing, guys, and always remember you are much appreciated. Secondhand Solo.
See, that's another person who said that I'm funny. I just need to keep telling my wife that, that other people do think I'm funny. It's not just me. Yes. Maybe eventually she'll realize.
I think you told that joke.
Yeah. No, that's what I'm saying. Like this is reinforcing that. Like I am right.
There you go. I'll read one more. This is from Keep It Neat. It said, 2 educators educate on reselling. Appreciate that. This is a really great podcast on reselling topics. I've learned so much and have really enjoyed it in the process. Mike and Orlando cover lots of topics that pertain to making money by selling stuff. These include sourcing items, both new and used, research, cleaning, photography, listing, customer service, packing tips and tricks, reseller news, and items to be on the lookout for. It's a lot involved in reselling. Their enthusiasm and knowledge makes this an entertaining podcast. Thank you, Orlando and Mike, for all that you do. And thank you. And I appreciate all of you that write these reviews, that support us on Patreon. We're grateful for all of you. So thanks so much. All right. It's time for are you ready?
Oh, yeah.
Are my notes okay?
I'm as ready as I could possibly be without being ready, but I will be in just a second.
No, but we're good. And I always love when people send Hustle of the Week, and sometimes they send us pictures and like the pictures disappear. So the first one, it's from memory, but it's all good.
Nice. All right. Come on, hustlers. It's the freaking Hustle of the Week. Yeah. All right. So our first hustle comes from Dean, IG handle at Deans_deals. So went to a thrift and came across a vintage Rawlings Ken Griffey Jr. bat. Nice, for $3.99. Being a big fan, was tough to list, but put it on eBay. Listed on eBay and sold the Ken Griffey Jr. Big Stick Professional Model Adronodog something. Signed bat with a certificate of authenticity within a week for $299 plus 99 cents and shipping. So from $3.99 to $2.99, like $3.99 to $299. Right? Like
if that's what I remember.
That's crazy.
So I'm sorry.
That's an amazing. Yeah. If it was more than that, even like.
No, it was under $10 and it was close to 300.
Yeah. So that's pretty amazing. I agree. It could be tough to sell something that you're like attached to.
Especially a Ken Griffey piece.
Here's my model. Here's what I always do. Cause I think this is the best way to get rid of things or decide whether it's worth keeping. If I would buy it, if I had $300, would I buy that bat? If I was just like, you know what, I've got $300 right now. That's a great tip. I'm going to go out and buy a Ken Griffey Jr. bat with signed, or because that's really what you're giving up. There's cost benefit there. So that's the best way I've found to like, do I sell this or do I not? If I'd be willing to buy it for what I could sell it for, like right now, like I've got the money, I'm going to go buy it. If I would say, if I had that money, I'd buy something else, then I'm selling that thing.
That, you know what? That's genius. Cause I've had some stuff. My hustle of the week today that I'm going to share is something that I almost held on to, but I was like, what am I going to hold on to it for? You know? So, okay. Thank you so much, Dean. Deans_deals. All right. So this is from Damien, IG handle DMW Buy Sell Trade, who I think I had a hustle of the week recently, like about a month ago, but I thought this was so good. I thought I'd give him another one. So was at the bins and saw another reseller pick up an item. After sourcing, did a quick lookup. So he had mentioned that in the bins, you don't look things up until after. Like have you seen those videos on TikTok? Mm-hmm. They are insane the way people go after stuff. It's just wild. So decided, did a quick lookup and saw that another reseller had picked up something that was made in Paris. Offered the reseller $500, which is a lot of money because at the bins, you're only spending a few dollars. And the other reseller agreed, listed on eBay and sold a F. Laurie Paris professional oboe, you know, like the musical instrument, with original case made in France for $1,620. That's not bad. Turning 500 and tripling that. That's great. That's great. Can't believe that's a bin find, you know? And I got to tell you, if you're not following DMW Buy Sell Trade on Instagram, you're missing out. I tell them all the time, you have a hustle a week, like pretty much every single day on there. So definitely check it out. And also on our Discord, we have awesome hustle of the weeks all the time on there. So check us out. So thank you for sharing, Damien.
All right, our next one comes from, I'm going to butcher the name. I hate when I don't like know how to pronounce the way it's said.
From the Discord.
But from our Discord. So it's Miss Moxie Miss. So from Discord, and what a great person. I mean, just always great insight and great things to add. So I love having you in the Discord. So bought a bunch of items at a yard sale for $30. Paid about $10 for some Care Bear Pizza Hut glasses. Saw a few comps, but decided to take better pictures and price at the top with another listing. Such a good idea. Always do that if you can. So sold a set of 6 Pizza Hut 1993 Care Bear glasses for $167 plus.
And these are drinking glasses, just to clarify.
So that's such a cool thing, because a lot of times you pass those on that kind of stuff. If it just seems like, I've talked about glassware in the past, and again, a lot of it is it's almost mass produced, so it's not valuable. Mm-hmm. For instance, when I saw this on the Discord, I was like, oh no, because I remember I had bought years ago when one of the new Star Trek movies came out. I bought Star Trek glasses from Burger King because I was like, oh, I like Star Trek. I'm gonna buy the Star Trek glasses. And then after I got married, and we were going through stuff, and I was like, do we really need these? And I threw them out. And then I'm like, did I throw away something worth like $167? And then I looked them up, and they're only worth like $10 for the set. So there's a difference between, even though these were Pizza Hut, so they were semi-mass produced, this was from 1993. So there's going to be fewer of them still in good condition.
Probably broke.
And it's different. I think even like if you look back at the old stuff from, McDonald's, the old stuff, that even though they were semi-mass produced or mass produced, the quality was different, or because again, it's so old, people weren't collecting them in the same way. Now it's like, McDonald's puts out a new thing that's supposed to be collectible, and it's like, well, that's not really collectible. I don't know. Maybe in 40 years it will be, but Probably not.
It's a long time to hold.
It's a long time to hold. But yeah, when you can score something like that, Care Bears, I mean, Care Bears definitely has a audience. Maybe not as big. We've never really talked about like the My Little Pony. Like My Little Pony.
Yeah.
My Little
Bronies.
The Bronies. There is like a legitimate like cult following. So anytime you can find something like that where there's a semi-cult following or a cult following behind a show or a brand, that's when you're going to do really well. So great job picking those up.
All right. Well, what's your hustle of the week?
So my hustle of the week isn't a big one. It's not as big as, several $100s or
and by the way, your hustle of the week does not have to be like $1,000 plus sale.
But it's kind of like one of those things. It's almost like a semi bolo too. So I've done pretty well over the years on watches, and I used to just always sell watches, just missing battery. I wouldn't even test them, like untested missing battery, and I would do pretty well. And then I've bought, because I've done some technology work on phones and other things, like basically the kits to take things apart, and watches are pretty easy to take apart, and I have the small enough, screwdrivers and stuff now. And I bought a whole bunch of watch batteries, and there's different ones, but I was able to get like a kit on Amazon of like, I don't know, it was like 100 batteries and like 10 of several different types. And it was like $10. So it's not a lot of money to get these watch batteries. And you pretty much have every one that you need in order to replace watch batteries. But even still, I sell a lot of my older watches that I've posted. I haven't gone through and changed that with. I'm just going to go forward doing that. But one of the ones that I sell often is Michael Kors watches. And Michael Kors watches are ones that it's not high enough end that when you go to like a garage sale or an estate sale, that somebody's wanting like, I want $100 for this watch, because they weren't that much to me. Maybe they were like $100 when they were brand new, but people are willing to let go of $100 watch that they bought brand new 5-10 years ago for $5. A lot of times, not always, but if it was, a Coach watch or something that's like higher end, where you're looking at obviously something crazy like Rolex, no one's selling those things for cheap. But Michael Kors, I feel like, is like that middle of the road. It's still high end enough. It's not just like a Walmart watch. But people are willing to let it go for cheap, but there's a market for it. And I regularly sell them for anywhere from $30 to $50. I recently just sold one for $35. And
usually they're working, right? Because they're not like an antique watch.
Right. Yeah.
Watch
they're always working.
Dead.
Yeah. They're always working. Or like I said, untested, but they just need a battery. And I've never sold one, like just needs battery, and had somebody say, hey, I replaced the battery and it doesn't work. So maybe I've just gotten lucky, but these are, and there's other brands too that I do this with, but Michael Kors is one of those ones that I would say every couple of months I run across a garage sale where someone's got 2 or 3 of them, and they've got them and they're like, I don't know, $5 each. So $15 for 3 watches. And I can usually bundle it with stuff and talk them down to $10. And then I sell those 3 watches over the course of the year for anywhere from $30 to $50 a piece. And those sales keep coming in. So it's a hustle of the week, because it was, that watch is probably one that I got with a couple other watches for less than $5 or around $5, if that, and selling it for $40. And it's just like a bread and butter item that when those sales come through, and they're so easy to ship, throw a little bit of bubble wrap around it and put it in a poly mailer, off it goes.
Yeah.
Easy peasy. It's cheap and it's easy to store. And those, to me, those are a lot of times the best hustles, is when it's something that's easy to take pictures of, easy to store, easy to ship, and they sell quick. Those are good hustles for me, even though that's kind of like maybe the definition of a bread and butter.
But over time, they're good.
Yeah. I'll take a $5 to $35, $40 flip any day.
There you go. All right. So mine is, I got to tell you.
You do have a big one.
This was a hard one for me to sell. And just because growing up, I loved Mad Magazine. Now I'm pretty bothered because the other day, somebody was giving away a collection. And they said, if somebody really is interested, I might just give it away, right? And so I messaged them, and because in the 90s, I grew up in San Francisco and I caught the bus everywhere. I don't know if do people catch the bus? Like, our parents let kids catch the bus at school? I don't know. I've never let my kid catch the bus.
Take a school bus, right?
No, I don't even let my kid take the school bus. But, I had a lot of dead time, so I'd always go to my public library and I'd read Mad Magazine. Did I gain
Spy versus Spy, man? That was my jam.
All of those, man. And did I gain anything intellectually? Probably not.
No, it's kind of drivel.
But it was a good time. And so I've always had like this connection with Mad Magazine. And so then I had this haul earlier this summer, and there was a lot of stuff in this home, and I didn't know the value of stuff. They're a great family, and they were just like, we just want to help you out, and they just kept piling stuff on. And I really didn't know what I had. And I started doing some research, and then I there was this Mad magazine. So the character, like the Bucktooth character, it's Alfred Newman. Okay. And they had a plastic model kit to build an Alfred Newman. Right. And it was from the 60s, and you open it and it was complete. Like, it still had all the plastic like connected.
The blister packs or the flashing.
Yeah. Everything was together and
unpunched
kind of. Yeah. And I looked it up and I'm like, wow, these sell for good money. Like they sell for like $300 to $500. I was like, this is crazy. So I listed mine high, and I always love it. Not when you make money, and not only when you make money, but when you send it to a home that will appreciate that. So it was kind of interesting. I just want to share the interaction I had with this individual. So it was up for $350 and they offered $300. So I took it because the highest I'd seen one sell was $500, but that one was like pristine. Mine had some purple stuff got on it, and there's just a couple like cosmetic wear issues, and the box wasn't like in the greatest shape, but $300. Yeah. And I only paid a few dollars for it probably. And so they messaged me and said, is $300 the set price? Would you go to $275? And this is after I accepted the offer. So they wanted a discount after. And I was like, okay, do I just say sure because I don't want to lose that money, or do I stand my ground? So I stood my ground and I said, that was the agreed upon price. If you need me to cancel, please let me know. And I was like, like they cancel, it's going to hurt. But they said, okay, it's a go. I just sent payment. I think they're just trying to see if they get a little more. Yeah. And then they said, can't wait to receive it again. Ship with care, please. Do you have other mat items for sale? So here we go. Repeat buyers building. And I said, got it. I wish I did. This was a hard piece to let go, which is true. I just mentioned I grew up reading mat. I'd come across anything, I'll let you know. So I always say, don't waste too much time messaging. But if you kind of build a connection with someone, it's worth having conversations. And so I said, I may have some older magazines, which I did. I've sold a few older magazines. Nothing major. Will definitely ship with care, blah, blah, blah. Said, thanks. No, it's going to a passionate mad collector who will be part of a great collection. Thanks for the purchase. I'll keep it very nice in a glass case. It looks awesome.
Nice.
And I was like, okay, if you have a glass case,
you're a collector.
You're a collector.
Yeah. You're an enthusiast.
Right. And so
you're a mad enthusiast.
So now I have someone I know that whenever I come across some, vintage mad stuff, like the stuff I was hoping to come across earlier this week, I have a buyer.
Yeah. And the hard thing is if they're already a collector, you don't know what they have. And so if you're like at a garage sale, you can't necessarily like wait for them to respond to say like, oh, I wouldn't do
that. Yeah. That's
however, if you do that a couple of times and you can make those kinds of connections, let's say you're able to make connections with 3 or 4 different people who collect Mad or collect Star Trek or collect, Care Bears, whatever it is, then you can almost easily pick up whatever you find that has that stuff, knowing that you can sell it to other people in case they're not interested. But yeah, you have that person that you can just message and say, hey, just want to let you know I've added this to my collection. And then you've got that quick, yes, I want it. And even if you have to sell it for a little bit cheaper to them, if you have that, and you have some of those people with like various like Harley gear, various things. So when you have somebody like that, that you're willing to work with, man, you're set. So that's one of the nice things about niching down into one category is or a few categories is you can really develop those connections with people. But even if you're not, if every time you go out, if I see something mad, I can pick it up because I've got a handful of people who buy it. And if all of those people aren't interested, it'll still probably sell to somebody else.
Yeah. And then, so it's a hustle of the week because it was incredible profit, but now I have a repeat buyer, which is going to lead to more profit. Right. So, all right, that is our hustle week. Thank you, everyone. If you always want to, you can always leave a phone call too at the 619-738-1170 number. We love playing those. So appreciate all of you that share. Remember, there's a hashtag on Instagram, hustle of the week, that you could leave there. And I look on there. That's how I found one of these. The other one, somebody had direct messaged me. So always find a way, to share. And we'd love to share on the podcast. Mm-hmm. Now, another thing we also like to share is how we keep our bald heads looking clean and crisp.
Yeah. Looking so shiny, so bald, so beautiful. The skull shaver has been great for us. I'm really big on efficiency, and I've talked a lot of times, so I don't want to like overrun, this concept, but there are times when you buy cheap because you think, hey, if I just buy a cheap one, it does the same thing as the expensive one. And that's not always the case. And there is a lot of times, like when you buy something that's quality, sometimes you pay a little bit more for it. And to be honest, Skull Shaver costs a little bit more than what you're going to do if you walk into Walmart and buy a foil-based electric razor.
Which don't cut really close.
Yeah, but you are going to have a really bad time shaving with a cheap razor, and it's going to break. And over the course of a couple of years, you are going to be replacing that thing multiple times. How long have we been using Skull Shaver now? Going on like 2.5 years?
At least more than 2 years.
Yeah, more than 2 years. And we have never had any issues with them. They work perfectly. I've never had the thought of, I need to replace this thing. The battery is still lasting forever. And so that's just to go. If you're a reseller, I know you're a frugal person or wise with money. One of those two, right? Like you make wise purchases. And so if you're somebody who knows, that you need to shave your head, buy a Skull Shaver. It's worth it. It's high quality. It's going to last you. It's easy. It's efficient. And we've been super, blessed to have partnered with them. So if you're interested, buy a Skull Shaver, use the code HUSTLE, capital H, HUSTLE. That lets them know we sent you. You'll get a little bit of a discount and it helps everybody out. And I'm sure you will not be disappointed. They probably even have a return policy if you're not happy, I'm sure, because it's such a good product. Check it out.
Yeah, and we don't know how much longer that coupon code will be available, and we might even be switching up sponsors here in a bit. So,
hey, if there's somebody better than them, I'd be shocked. But
not to shave heads, but I'm just saying overall.
Oh yeah. Right? That's true. Yeah. So you guys are probably getting tired of hearing about Skull Shaver, but if you haven't got one yet, get on it because it's worth it.
Yeah. All right. So when do you speed up? Right, you were talking about slow and spaghetti. It's slow and spaghetti. It's spaghetti. And there are times. I would say the first one is when you have the proper capital in place, right? You've been reselling for a while. You've been slowly building your capital. And now you have the knowledge. And now you have the connection. And now there's, you end up getting contacted. Somebody says, hey, I have 1,000 Department 56 items I'd like to sell. And you've sold a lot of Department 56. And you know that certain ones aren't good money. And others aren't. And then you also go, you know what? They want $4,000. I have the $4,000. And not only that, but I have the place to store it. I know how to ship them. Then it's time to speed up and make that bulk buy.
Yeah. Having your capital in place is that first part, right? Like having the money available. And we are not opposed, if you're an experienced reseller, you know what you're doing, you know the niche you're getting into, to taking out credit. In fact, most successful businesses are running on credit in various aspects. I mean, that's how you leverage credit in order to be successful. However, that's risky and you really got to know what you're doing. And that could be part of it too. Like having the capital could be having access to a bank where you're not getting like credit card level interest rates, but you're able to take out, if you needed a loan on something, that could be part of the capital too. Like either one, you've developed enough of a savings for your business where you can tap in and say, hey, I can pull out thousands of dollars and it's not going to impact my daily workflow. Or you can say, I have easy access to it because I've developed relationships or I've already taken out loans with this bank at a very low interest rate. And so it's less risky for me to pull out a $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 loan with this because the interest rates are low. I know I'm going to recoup. But if you don't have, if your access to $20,000, if you need it, is a credit card with 20% interest versus, hey, I'm going to go to a bank and I'm getting 3% interest because I've worked with them. They know I pay them back. It's a business loan. My business has credit available to it. Those are two very different things. And so we're not against credit, but the ideal thing for the average reseller, if you're not at that place, is just being able to have the money in a bank account that you've been saving. If you are spending everything that goes into your business account on expenses and on paying yourself because otherwise you're not making it, then you don't have the cash flow available to make big purchases and make moves into scale. So the ideal situation is, hey, I've been able to go 3, 4, 5 months and every month my business account grows by $1,000 or more. Now I can feel pretty comfortable saying I'm going to pull $3,000 out of it to buy this thing because that's not going to impact. I'm already paying myself. I'm already paying all my expenses and I have a surplus of money available to me. So yeah, when you're in a position where you've got a surplus or you have access to low cost debt, and you know you can pay it back. And again, we don't just recommend that. That's something you got to be wise.
I agree. I mean, there's also, if you know people that could do a hard money loan, right? And I'm not talking about like loan sharks. Yeah. No, but I'm talking about like legitimate.
Hey, you either pay it back or you get broken legs. It's fine.
No, but example, I'm still waiting for the day that I can buy out a store, like an entire store, because I have the ability to do that. I just haven't come across the right deal and I've had a couple offered to me, but it's just, you really, again, it was places where I'm like, I don't know enough. Like this could doom me right now. And so I'm not going to go down this road. And I know the whole hustle culture, the whole, like, I'll never forget, one of those influencers, we know who we're talking about, would talk about like, if you have a part-time job, like you're not an entrepreneur. If you're not back against the wall, you're not actually hustling. And it's like, what?
Or you can just be really wise.
Yeah.
You're hedging some bets.
Yeah, I know. And so, you got to be careful. And for me, I have kids I'm raising. I have, one of them that's in private school. I have a lot of things that if I were to take major risk and things were to fall apart, it could ruin my own kids' lives. And I'm not going to do that. So you got to be wise about those things. And so this is why slow and steady. Now, having systems in place, and I just kind of briefly mentioned that, having your shipping in place, having your organization in place, having an understanding of, like I just mentioned about repeat buyers. Like I know if I have a major rain spooner haul, I could probably move all that within a month, right? I could maybe even move probably a quarter of that to just a few sellers that I have connections with that I go, hey, by the way, I just picked this up. I'm not even going to put this on eBay. I'll sell it to you directly, right? Because then I don't have to pay for fees. I don't have to, deal with all that mess. I can just directly drop it off to them.
Isn't that so cool? Like when I first started reselling, I'd always wonder people who did things like storage units or things like that. Like, how do you deal with the fact that you're going to get stuff you don't know? But the longer you do it, part of those systems in place is just the network. And we've talked a lot about building a network. And when like, hey, when I get big stuff, I can offload it here. These people buy these things. Hey, if I get trash, if I do a big buyout and I'm going to have like totes full of garbage, what do I do with that? Well, I've already got the connections with, these thrift stores will take these items as donations, and these types of items, I already know how to load up a trailer and take it to the dump. And if I get these go to these people. And the longer you do it, you develop those connections with those people. There have been multiple times where either you or me have contacted, or I've contacted somebody and said, hey, there's this deal that came up. I'm not interested in it because that's not my area. Would you like it? And the same thing has happened with other people sending us deals. Mm-hmm. So the more you do things like that, you develop the systems where you can grow and you can, I'm not as worried now if I get certain items that I can't offload them, or I don't know how to store them, or I've learned those things, but it's taken time. And again, I think a big part of it is do it slowly. Like some people try and put the systems in place before they're ready. And we've talked to people on interviews where they've said, yeah, we bought a, our 10,000 square foot storage unit, mm-hmm. and we were in an office space in there and we weren't ready for it. And it pretty much destroyed us. Or people who are like, we can afford that. We've got the cash flow for it, and it allowed us to scale. And you have to be at that place where you can do that. If you are currently tapped out and you don't have room to take in a lot more inventory, and you try and take in more inventory and get another storage unit, but you don't have the cash flow to pay for the new storage unit, mm-hmm. you haven't done the math, you could sink yourself. And that happens a lot of times with businesses. I think of Starbucks is a good example of this. And I don't know exactly all Starbucks numbers, but I remember where I grew up when Starbucks first started to really expand. And I'm sure a lot of you have experienced this, where almost every corner there was a Starbucks. And the idea was, we don't want people to have to make a U-turn. So across the street, there'd be a Starbucks on one corner, and across the street, catty corner would be another Starbucks. That is not efficient. It's not efficient. And the idea was, hey, everybody wants it. We can just keep growing and growing and growing. And over time, you start seeing like these Starbucks are shutting down, and they overexpanded. And now their cost of overhead went up way more than they were making. And we can make that same mistake. We can think, hey, if one is good, two's got to be better. Mm-hmm. And maybe not. So you've got to have those systems in place. You got to know, can my cash flow, can what I'm moving actually support the infrastructure that I'm trying to build, or the new storage unit that I'm going to be renting, whatever it is. And so once you have those systems in place, then you can move. If you're like, hey, I'm already moving in the right direction, and actually I can double maybe your storage units enough that you can say, hey, I can literally just throw another rack on top of all of my racks. And now I've just doubled the amount of inventory I can handle, and my costs haven't gone up at all.
Yeah.
So maybe you've got the system in place. Boom, you're ready to go. You can double up, and you're not hurting anything. But only you know that based off of doing this slowly. And if you just make that decision rashly, you're going to be in a world, or could be in a world of hurt. Maybe it works out for you. But
well, I mean, one of the best interviews to listen to that we've done, and eventually we're going to get back to interviews, is Latin Pickers. Right. They started slow, right? They started in their apartment. They actually had bookshelves in their apartment. Yeah. They had to
doing it out of a box van.
Yeah,
they were selling out of a box van for a while,
right? And they had to figure out what do you do with the. Initially, they're doing the thrift stores, and then they learned how to do bulk buys, and they had to figure out how to sell the books that they couldn't send to Amazon. Then they had to figure out sometimes they don't get only books, but they get a bunch of other stuff when they do these Gaylord pickups. Where do they put that? You should check out the interview. It's fascinating. Now I think they have like 3 warehouses. They're doing really well. So check out the interview. But again, systems are very key when trying to speed up. And the last one here is when the opportunity arises, right? I think there has to be a time if you want to scale, especially if you want to be a full-time seller, where you have to strike when the opportunity arises. Like for me, mine was Toys R Us shutting down. Like that was a time where I had no options but to just move, right? I just had resigned from my position. I was a full-time seller. I was making full-time income, but I needed to make it steady. And Toys R Us started shutting down. And so what I did is I rented a cargo van and I bought out tons of inventory from Toys R Us. And guess what? That allowed me to scale. But it took 5 years of part-time reselling, building capital, understanding how to source, understanding how to negotiate, knowing how to make those deals. And I was able to do it, right? My eBay side haul in the beginning was Harley Davidson. I had sold a few Harley Davidson. I knew what they meant as far as like, hey, 3D emblems, a great Harley shirt. The ones that really don't have a lot of graphics aren't great. People want vintage. And I was a fairly new reseller, but I had sold a few and I landed on an estate sale. And at this estate sale, I spent $200, but I ended up getting, I don't know, like 100 Harley shirts, 30 pairs of Harley jeans, boots, you name it, everything. Guess what? I made a killing. Why? Because I had the capital, which at that time, $200 was a lot of money for me. I understood what to sell. I knew how to list. I knew how to ship it, and I was able to make the move. So you have to strike when the opportunity arises. And I have a bunch of hauls. I have a Hot Wheels. I have all these hauls I can talk about, but everyone has their story that eventually, after slowly building their eBay business, they had the huge buyout, and that really took them to the next level.
And that reminds me of when we did our Richest Man in Babylon. I was kind of quickly scanning through to find a quote
from our library. Yeah.
There's a whole story in here that is connected to this, but this quote I think is pretty good. It says, "Opportunity is a haughty goddess who wastes no time with those who are unprepared." Mm-hmm. And the whole idea is like, there's no luck. Quote. There's no luck, but there's opportunity. But opportunity is not going to sit there and waste time with you if you're not prepared for it. So all of these things growing slowly, what it does is it gets you into a position, like we talked about, building the infrastructure, making mistakes and learning from them, to get to the place where when opportunity comes, you're ready to move on it. And it's not going to sit around and wait for you to get ready for it. So if you've wasted time and you haven't learned and you haven't grown, you haven't got yourself into that position, when that opportunity comes, you're going to be too slow and it's going to be gone. So opportunities eventually will come for you, but you've got to you got to establish yourself into that position. You're not ready yet when you first start out for an opportunity because you don't even know whether that is a good opportunity or not. Mm-hmm. But when you've set yourself up to be in a position where all of a sudden the opportunity comes and you say, this could be the score of a lifetime. This could get me through the next 2 years. Mm-hmm. And you're able to jump on that. That's not because you got lucky. It's because you've set yourself up with knowledge, experience, infrastructure, systems, processes, knowledge, partnerships, all of those things that are required. So when opportunity comes, you're not too slow for it because it's not waiting for you. Agreed.
And so hopefully as you're slowly and steady building your business, you'll be able to hit that score that'll last you. It'd be nice to get a score that you go on for your...
It's certainly good.
I mean, I would miss the hunt, but it'd be kind of nice.
But that's the thing is you don't have to stop. You don't have to stop going. You can have a score that lasts you years, and then you use that as the opportunity to double in size.
There you go. So hopefully you're able to gain a lot today, whether you're a new reseller or an experienced reseller and you're like, I can relate to that, Orlando. I know what you're talking about, Mike. Really appreciate all of you tuning in. If you haven't yet, smash that like button on the YouTube, and I hope to catch you over on our Discord. And with that being said, make sure to be real,
be relevant,
and be reselling late.
Peace.